let's move on to the Biden's plan to litigate and his plan to win the election through litigation. We've got a story here out of the New York Times. Biden creates legal war room, preparing for a big fight over voting. It says he's got 2 former solicitors generals, hundreds of lawyers, and is bracing for an extended legal battle, hoping to maintain trust in the electoral process. Thank you, New York Times subhead there, to just let us know that he's out there to maintain election trust. So he's talking about, this story talks about how he's got a new legal team. Legal battles are already raging of how people will vote, how ballots will be counted this fall during the pandemic, and senior Biden officials described the ramp up as necessary to guard the integrity of a fall election already clouded by President Trump's baseless accusations of widespread fraud. And so inside the campaign, they're creating a special litigation unit, which will be led by Donald B. Verrilli Jr., Walter Dellinger, 2 former solicitors general who are joining the campaign. Hundreds of lawyers will be involved, including a team at the Democrat law firm Perkins Coie, led by Mark Elias, which will focus on a state-by-state fight over vote casting and counting rules. Of course, we've got former Attorney General Eric Holder. Now, I highlighted Mark Elias here. Who is Mark Elias, and who is Perkins Coie? You may have heard of both of these people now. And wherever you might have heard of Perkins Coie? This is a story from, let's see, here we are. Okay, this is a Federalist story. Elias and another, this is just take it. I'm taking this in. Just follow along here. Elias, another Perkins Coie partner, Michael Sussman, hired the opposition research firm Fusion GPS. Let me just scroll up there so you can see. Paying money to former British spy Christopher Steele, who paid money to anonymous Russian sources via a British national named Edward Baumgartner, who had ties to Russia. These Russian sources working with Steele and Fusion GPS came up with the allegations of the so-called Steele dossier, which circulated throughout the highest levels of the Obama administration during the 2016 election. This occurred despite no part of the dossier having anything being close to verified, and intelligence organizations had reasoned it out. So we know that story, right? So this legal team, go back here. This legal team, Perkins Coie, led by Mark Elias, is the law firm that hired Christopher Steele to then hired by Fusion GPS to create the Steele dossier, which was then used as evidence. This is the salacious thing with Trump going pee in the Russian hotel and all this weird stuff. People are still convinced that there's some video out there of Trump urinating on a bed with something having to do with where Michelle and President Obama stayed, something like that. I mean, just the most nonsensical things, but made it into the news, and the FBI used it to justify spying on members of the Trump campaign, and then the Mueller investigation. So that's the guy, and that's the law firm that Biden has working in his corner. And by the way, have you heard this? Speaking of the Mueller investigation, which is the genesis of this in 2016, Perkins Coie, Mark Elias, hire Fusion GPS, start the Steele dossier, and then here we go all the way out to impeachment and the Mueller investigation. All that nonsense. And as the Department of Justice Inspector General wanted to take a look at some of the communications between the Mueller team, what happened? Grassley, the story from National Review, Grassley demands explanation from DOJ on Mueller's team wiped phones, whether it was a widespread intentional effort. Now, all the way up to 30, so at least 27 cell phones belonging to members of Mueller's team were wiped clean before the DOJ Inspector General could comb them for records. The DOJ said in records released Thursday, including mobile phones that were reassigned, members of special counsel's office wiped a total of 31 phones. Now, why would they all wipe their phones? And I believe it was one case that purposely putting in, I guess, an iPhone. I'm not sure what it is, but I guess if you enter in the wrong password 10 times. So they just go in, keep entering the wrong password, and it wipes it and kills it. So Was there more evidence, like we saw the text between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page about we'll get him, referring to President Trump? What were they hiding? Clearly something. They just get away with it. They just get away with it. And so here we go. I mean, we see how everything sort of ties together, don't you? You got this Perkins Coie law firm. You got this Mark Elias character, and he's out there suing states for ballots or for on election rules. And it's interesting as we scroll through here. There's a case here. Here's the here's a story here out of WAMU 88.5. It says the legal fight over voting rights during the pandemic is getting hotter. And I want to highlight just a case here. What we have Mr. Mark Elias here. It says Democrats have intensified their push for states to implement changes they have long wanted, such as allowing same-day voter registration and eliminating the need for voters to provide an excuse to vote absentee. Says Elias has filed a separate suit in Nevada. This may be a story from back in June, arguing that the state should allow third parties to collect and deliver absentee ballots for voters who might not be able to do so on their own. Elias has also revised a lawsuit calling on Wisconsin to eliminate requirements that voters provide a photo ID when requesting an absentee ballot and have a witness sign for their completed ballot. Efforts by Democrats to loosen the state's mail-in voting rules for the April 7th primary were blocked by Republicans, where tens of thousands of voters ended up going to the polls in person despite the health threat. You remember this, guys? And by the way, no one got sick. People went and they voted. But you can see, I mean, here's this one story from back. This is who's working for the Biden team now. They don't want same day voting registration. Yeah, I just walk up, register, same day. I don't need to provide an ID. Why would I need to do that? I could just walk up to a polling place, sign up, sign my, under penalty of perjury. I assert that I am this person, and then I go vote. And then I get maybe they give me a ballot on election day or something, and then I put it in the mail that day, and then it gets to the place, next week or something. They want to count the votes forever. Another thing here, the state should allow third parties to collect and deliver absentee ballots to voters who might not be able to do so on their own. This is called ballot harvesting, and I talked about this maybe a month or so ago. This idea that you have a third party can just come and collect your ballot. I mean, and as the article says, might not be able to do so on their own. I mean, you really are incapable of getting that ballot. You can't mail it, then one of the rules I think they want to relax is what is allowed in some cases is to allow like your wife or a daughter, someone in your family, say you're infirm and you actually can't get out of bed or something, but you have a ballot, you want to vote, they can go deliver it. But what they mean by third party is not family members, meaning some organization knocking on doors, just collecting all these ballots. And maybe even, I think in some cases they allow them to help you fill out your ballot with some, a nudge and a wink or something here. So that's what they want to do. That's what the fight is. This is what they're going after. So these are basically the schemes here that we're up against. Is basically to let anybody who wants to vote. You show up. You don't have to give an ID, and then we're going to have these massive organizations going around and picking up ballots and then delivering them to the ballot office. I mean, if that doesn't sound ripe for fraud, I don't know what does. And of course, the article here goes through painstaking effort to tell you that there is no fraud and there's no evidence of such a thing. But it is interesting as you scroll down here. It says there's a clear difference between. Okay, so here we go. For the first time in decades, the National Republican Party can mount campaigns against allegations of voter fraud without prior court approval. There had been a court-imposed ban on voter fraud operations since the early 1980s after courts found repeated instances of the parties working to exclude minority voters in the name of preventing fraud. Now, they do have a link here if you want to just see that. In the New York Times, if you want to read it, it's called here, Freed by Court Ruling, Republicans Step Up Effort to Patrol Voting. So officials seek to recruit 50,000 poll watchers and spend millions to fight voter fraud. And Democrats say the real goal is to stop them from voting. So just gotta love the subheading here. Now, that's interesting though. I mean, think about this. If you can't investigate voter fraud, then you're not gonna find it. I mean, that's a good one, right? I mean, there is, I believe I've heard of this. It's called a consent decree by the Republican Party not to investigate any evidence of fraud. So they agree to this thing that ties their hands, which is now expired now, apparently for the first time since 1980. And so they don't look for it because they agreed not to. And so when they can say things like, well, there's fraud, they couldn't in the previous 40 years investigate voter fraud. And then that way Democrats can say, hey, what are you guys talking about fraud? There's no fraud. Well, there's an agreement. You can't look into it. So of course, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means no one's investigating it. And it looks like that's about to change this November, as I guess Republicans are putting 50,000 volunteers to watch the polls. I don't know what they're going to do. It does bring up what is election night going to look like. It's a potentially scary proposition. If we get these poll watchers, we're going to have long lines. We're going to have, we'll probably have protesters out there. Depending on the city, you may see Antifa come out there, and then maybe some counter Antifa people, maybe some MAGA type people. Could be, fighting in the streets potentially on election night. But the plan here is not to have things ended on election night. The plan from the Biden campaign, we've seen this floated, this idea. There was a story here that I covered, I believe, last week from Axios that, you might see an early Trump victory in the Electoral College. But hold on, pump the brakes. We haven't counted all the votes yet. We've got truckloads of Biden ballots on their way that we're going to count. Facebook has now said that you cannot declare, it will ban posts of declaring early victory. Twitter has followed suit. So just say on election night, counting all the votes, President Trump will call himself, will declare himself the victory. He may end up with over 270 electoral votes. He'll declare victory. And the news media will basically not, will basically say, don't believe him. It's not over yet, because there will be cries from the Biden team, the Perkins Coie people, the Mark Eliases of the world, suing to, a lawsuit for all kinds of stuff, and about how we have to count every single vote, which may take weeks. And God darn it, what do you know? Just by sheer luck, we found tons of Biden votes as we started looking into it. So that is the plan. That is what they have in store. That is what the Biden campaign is banking on. We've been seeing they've been filing these lawsuits all over the country, and they plan on a long contested fight. And I think, I don't know, whatever gets settled in the courts. My opinion, my longstanding opinion, has been this thing needs to be called on election night, and every ballot needs to be in and counted by the end of the day. And if not, sorry, it's done. You should have went to the polls personally and voted. That is where I stand. Or fill out a ballot and have someone, have a relative or someone drop it off for you. Drop it off at the ballot box. This election, the way things are shaping up, it could be really, really scary stuff and contentious. And I don't want to throw around civil war yet, but this could be a very, very dirty fight.